to satsang, everyone. With how can you forget the hurt that has been caused to you by others? So it's not so much a matter of forgetting. It's a matter of letting go of the emotional component of the memory. And they're two very different things. When someone says, oh, forget it, let it go. Forget it and let it go actually are two completely different things. That which happens to us, it happens for a reason. Nothing in life is random. Whether you look at it from the perspective of a divine God, a divine planner, or you look at it from this perspective of the laws of karma and destiny, whether you look at it from the perspective of action and reaction, however we look at it, whether you look at it from the perspective of the laws of nature, nothing is random. That which happens to us happens for a reason. And the teachings of karma and destiny and our whole spiritual evolution are very, very clear on the idea that that which we get for two reasons. Number one, we get it because it is the fruit of a seed that either we planted or we permitted someone else to plant in our front yard. So if you discover that you've got a garden full of oranges, you look up and there's an orange tree. Well, it's because at some point in the past, either you planted an orange seed or you let someone else plant an orange seed in your garden. Those are the only two explanations for having a garden full of oranges and a tree that's producing them in your yard. But there's another reason that we get what we get. Because the universe doesn't operate just on a very superficial level of seeds and fruit. The law of nature is rooted in that which you plant, it grows, it has a season. But the laws of spiritual nature, the laws of karma, the laws of reincarnation and destiny, have another much deeper element to them, which is the actual agenda of the universe, that we should wake up. That's actually why we're here. And so we're not just like leaves in a river that sort of whichever way the river blows, we go. It's not just a matter of what seeds are planted. There's a force at work that is much deeper than that. And that's a force in which our entire existence, the whole reason we took birth as a human, was so we could wake up. When we talk about a human birth as the pinnacle of evolution, the highest point of evolution, well, physical evolution depends on which way you look at it. We're certainly not the fastest or the strongest, or if you look at it simply from our cerebral cortex, okay, we have the most developed cerebral cortex, but one could certainly argue whether we were actually the pinnacle of physical evolution. We're certainly not the pinnacle of moral and ethical evolution. Everything in nature is actually more moral and ethical than we are. Even animals like lions and tigers. They only harm if they're being directly threatened or if they need food. We're probably the only species that actually harms when our life isn't just in danger or because we need food. So one could definitely argue whether we are the pinnacle of physical evolution or moral, ethical evolution. The reason that it is said that we are the pinnacle of spiritual evolution is for one reason and one reason only. We are the only species that we know of that has the ability to look at itself, to be conscious of its own consciousness. And because of that, we are the only species that is believed that actually has the capacity for enlightenment. Because enlightenment requires the ability to look at oneself and say, I'm not the thoughts. I'm not the thinker of the thoughts. I'm not the emotions. I'm not the haver of the emotions. I'm not the physical body. I'm not its desires. I'm not its history. I'm not its yearning. The rest of nature just kind of acts. A dog never stops and says, is this really a dog-like thing to do? Is this in the highest service of my dogness? It just does what dogs do. We're the only species that actually has that sense of stopping and saying, okay, wait. Is there an alternative way of reacting here? So here's what I've always done. I know where that leads me. It leads me to misery. It leads me to depression. It leads me to anxiety. It leads me to bad consequences. Is there another alternative way of being? Is there another alternative way of thinking? Can I get into what's called the witness state and actually be not the doer, but the one who's witnessing the doing? Can I go even deeper and witness the witness? And that's the practice through which we have the possibility of awakening. And this is important because when we talk about our lives, when we talk about what we get, that which we get is in line with our karmic seeds, but it's also in line with the universe's very clear agenda that we should wake up, that we should use the tools we've been given and use them to wake up. And so that which we get is also that which is most conducive for us to take the next step on our awakening. So it's sickness, it's health, it's wealth, it's poverty, it's failure, it's success, it's opportunity, it's lack of opportunity. Whatever it may be, it's been given to us because it's in that situation, with a gold spoon in our mouth, with a silver spoon in our mouth, with no spoon in our mouth and no food in our mouth, or anywhere else along the spectrum. That's the situation that is actually the most conducive for our particular next step. And so when you look at getting over the hurt of people who have hurt you, forgetting it, first part is it's not about forgetting. But the second part is it's about recognizing that that which I've gotten has not been given to me just so I can forget it. It's been given to me for a reason. There's a lesson I'm supposed to learn here. And so if I've been hurt by someone, yes, I need to let it go. I need to let the hurt go because the hurt is a virus. That hurt is literally eating me alive. That hurt is ruining my brain. Every time I close my eyes, every time there's a moment of silence, every time I'm alone, all I can think about is what that person did to me. So it's this virus that takes over my brain. How did they do it? Why did they do it? That's not fair. So it's a virus in my brain. It becomes a virus in my body. Because that holding on to hurt, that grudge, that anger, that pain, actually ends up wreaking havoc in our immune systems, in our digestive systems, in our reproductive systems, in every aspect of the body that needs to flow freely. You've literally taken a cork and stuck it in to the vessel of you through which the divine is supposed to be flowing, but that anger, that pain, that grudge has literally gone like that. Nothing can flow now. And so we let go, because if we don't let go, we continue to suffer. But we don't forget, because forgetting implies that I'm throwing the lesson out. There's always a lesson in getting hurt. Maybe we can avoid that situation in the future. Maybe we can prevent it, protect ourselves in some way. Or maybe the lesson is simply to learn how to let something go. Someone stole something of ours, a physical item. Maybe they stole our reputation. Maybe they did something that humiliated us. Whatever it is that they stole, maybe the lesson there is to learn how to let it go. Who am I without that jacket that they said they were only borrowing and then claimed they never borrowed and I know is in their closet? Or who would I be without that ijat, that reputation that I thought I had that was so important before I was humiliated? Who would I be without that attachment to that success or that title or that role or that relationship or whatever it is that they stole from me? Because again, remember, there's a lesson. We're not operating in a vacuum. So hold the lesson, but let go of the emotional charge, so that if you think about what happened, you can still distill the lesson, you can still keep learning, because a lot of times when things happen in our life, we learn one lesson in the moment. The lesson of that moment may be, I can't trust that person. But as the days go by, as the weeks go by, as the years go by, a lot of times we find we learn so much more. Most people I know are actually deeply, deeply grateful, myself included, for the pain that I've gone through in my life. I'm actually deeply grateful for the way that I've been hurt, because it has taught me so much. Not in a jaded way of, oh yeah, I've learned you can't trust anybody. Not that. That's not actually a lesson. That's a defense mechanism. It's called denial. Very different from actually learning a lesson. But what you learn is about yourself. What you learn is about an inner strength. What you learn about is what you thought you were attached to, what you thought you needed, who you thought you were. And you get taken to a deeper level. So don't try to forget the hurt that someone did to you. Let go of the emotional attachment to it. Hold the lesson. And move on. Because otherwise we become a festering wound. And what it does is, it's really a tragic irony. Say you're 30 years old. And say for 30 years, of course, you've had your share of ups and downs, but there have been so many people in your life who have just supported you and loved you and cared for you in such ways, from your family to friends to neighbors to colleagues to so many people who have loved you and been there for you and supported you. And one guy or one lady does something that really hurts you, and now you are miserable. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you take to drugs and alcohol, you decide, forget it, I'm going to not do what I was doing in the world because it's not worth it, you just get hurt. Now think about what that looks like to all the people who have loved you and supported you and cared for you and been there for you all the years of your life. Like somehow one rascal, one person who in their own suffering, in their own pain, in their own confusion, couldn't treat you with the love or the care or the compassion or the patience that was required at that time. And suddenly that outweighs everything else that has happened in your life, and now you're ready to be depressed, to give up, to turn to drugs. Really? What does that say about everybody else in your life? And so we realize, out of love and care and value and respect for all of the other people who have treated us with love and compassion and respect, you can't let that one person or one act dictate now how you move through the world. It's an absolute violation, an undermining of everyone else in your life, of everything else that's ever happened in your life. And also what it is it's a way of handing over your freedom to the person who hurt you. So they've already stolen what they stole. Your money, your jacket, your prestige, your job, whatever it may be. They've already done that. Now you're going to take your freedom, your spiritual, emotional, mental freedom to think what you want, to feel what you want, and you're going to hand it to them. They've already shown you they can't be trusted. They couldn't be trusted with your money, your jacket, your job, whatever it was that they've already injured. Why in the world would you take that which is of the highest value in your life, your freedom, to think, to live, to be, to feel, and hand that over to them? But if you live as a victim of what they did, that's exactly what you do. You say, all right, you hurt me once. You stole from me once. I know. I'm going to take everything I've got and I'm going to hand it to you also. Because you showed me that you take such good care of me. Like, what kind of logic is that? But it's what we all do. And so for that reason, out of love for ourselves, our capital S self, out of love for everyone else we've ever interacted with in the world, everyone in our life, we let go. And we move on. But you don't have to forget. You hold the lesson. Because that's what you're supposed to take from it. If there are other questions here, yes.
As I understood you now explained why we should let go of this emotional pain, but I didn't understand how we could.
How do we let go?
Go of that emotional pain.
So, fortunately, this is one area where simply understanding it in the mind is almost enough. There's a lot of areas where it's not enough. But this is actually one area where a real deep, full understanding in the mind is almost all you need. Because when I really understand how absolutely silly I'm being, how absolutely voluntarily I've taken my freedom and given it to someone, we start to take it back. It's the first and most important step, and it actually gets you almost all of the way there. There's some moments in our life in which simply the presence of truth is enough. I remember when I was back in America for the few months in between being in India and then moving to India. And Pujya Swamiji had sent me back to finish the next semester, and everybody I knew told me I was completely crazy to come back and didn't make sense, and I should, finish the degree and get myself settled and do all of that. And then if I wanted to, take a year or two off for a spiritual quest, I could do that. People go to the Peace Corps, they do all sorts of things, no problem. But first get yourself settled. And I spent many weeks in this inner deep anxiety of one voice in my head saying, I know I'm supposed to be back in India. I know I'm supposed to be back in India. And this other voice in my head that was deeply indoctrinated by the world that I lived in, a world I had spent 25 years in, a world that was my world, that I had always believed everything it told me. I wasn't a rebel of that world that was used to not doing what anybody said. And I went and I was talking with a very, very dear friend of mine, a mentor. And I was telling her about this, and she looked at me and she said, when I look at you, I see a woman who is already back in India. She said, that decision, it seems to me, has already been made. And as far as I can tell, the only real decision you have to make now is whether you're going to spend the next 6 weeks, because that was what was left of my semester, the next 6 weeks driving yourself crazy, convincing yourself you're making a decision that you've already made. Or you can spend the next 6 weeks packing and figuring out how to move back to India. And I share this story with you because in that moment when she said that, simply the speaking of the truth dissipated 100% of the anxiety. Not 10%, not 20%, not, oh yeah, you're right, but oh my God, now what do I do? There are moments in our life in which the presence of the truth is enough to dissipate all of the untruth. And this particular situation of the hurt that we hold on to actually can be one of those situations. The minute that I really have that awareness, like the truth literally starts to feel like a presence in the room. I mean, there had been 2 of us, and then it literally felt like there were 3 of us, that it was her and me and truth that suddenly now existed in the room. And when you really have that awareness of, oh, wait, what am I doing? Yeah. If you allow yourself to breathe, a lot of times in that moment, you can actually breathe it out. When you realize that you're hanging on to something, that isn't of the present moment. The being who was hurt isn't in the room now. On a very physical, literal level. Every cell of your being, if it happened more than several years ago, every cell of your being has changed. skin cells have changed, your organs have regenerated, your blood has regenerated. Like there's not a cell in you today that was hurt if it happened more than several years ago. And if it happened less long ago than several years, the cells that are in you are cells like the ones of your liver or your kidneys. But they're not the ones holding on to the pain. It's the mind, it's the brain that isn't letting go. And so the minute that we realize that actually the pain that I'm experiencing is my choice. I've brought it into this moment. And I have a choice to hold on to it or to let it go. So here's a good way to think about it. It's my favorite example on the subject. Imagine, and it's a light example, but imagine that here I've got this beautiful little couch thingy that they've made me. And you don't have to imagine it, you can see it. And it's a beautiful cream colored. Now imagine that at some time other than satsang, I was sitting with someone and I invited them to come and to sit next to me here. And then I said, hold on a moment. You look like you need a cup of tea. And I personally go in the kitchen and I cook them up a cup of tea or coffee with all the love in my heart. And I bring it back and I sit next to them here. And they then take that cup of tea or coffee and they spill it on my couch. Knowingly or unknowingly, on purpose or not on purpose, it doesn't matter. Either way, they spill it on my couch. And then they have the audacity to stand up and walk out. What would you advise me to do in that moment? Clean it up. Anybody going to run after them? Get back here. Clean up that mess. Because I know I've got to sit here every night. This is my couch. Coffee stains, tea stains. I'll deal with them later, but at the moment, I've got to get this stain out of my couch. Now, here's what's interesting. There's no one who would advise me or who in their own lives would say, yeah, I know, keep the stain. So that next time when they come back, you can show them, look what you did. Look what you did. Look what a mess you made of my couch. Or so that I could say to other people, oh, you know that guy? Can you believe it? I made him a cup of tea and look at the stain on my couch. You see it right there? He did that. And I had just made him a cup of tea with my own hands. Sadly, we understand intuitively the value of our beautiful couches much more than we understand the value of our hearts. Because when someone hurts you, what we do is we hold on to it, like the stain, sort of expecting that they're going to come back and clean it up. And in the meantime, it festers, and it smells, and ants come. And I sit here every night and I get sick, because there's all kinds of bacteria growing in it. But I'm waiting that guy's going to come back and clean up the mess he made, because it's his fault. And I had been so nice. And that's what we do with our hearts. We hold it and just let it fester. Because on some level, we're waiting. We're waiting that person going to fix it. And this is the dilemma. They may. People change. People repent. People apologize. It happens. But it doesn't happen nearly enough. And it certainly doesn't happen all the time. And it certainly doesn't happen quickly. And I could always get another couch if I made the wrong decision and decided that he was worth waiting for to come back and clean it up and he didn't show up. But I can't get another heart. And it's not a gamble worth taking. If they come back and they're changed and they repent, wonderful. You've got a beautiful couch upon which to offer them a seat. You may want to wait a while before making them a cup of tea. You may want to try it out for a little while first. But great. You now can have another relationship. But if they don't come back, if they don't repent, at least you don't make yourself sick by sitting on this bacteria-infested, ant-infested, smelly couch every night. And your heart, it's not just every night, it's all the time. So that awareness of, oh wait, that if you really take it deeply, should be enough to let you let it go. And you're here on the banks of Ganga in a sacred place with a sacred river who takes pain. She took mine. I've watched her take so many people's. Sit in the yagna fire every night. Anybody having trouble letting things go, sit in that yagna every night. And offer the seeds, and offer the seeds, and offer them. And offer them until it's just seeds. Keep offering all of the pain in you, everything in you. The pain, the grudges, the anger, all of that. Just keep offering. Keep offering. Keep offering until there's nothing left to offer and you've just got a handful of seeds. Stand in Ganga. Offer to her waters. She'll take it. You're worth it. Because of course that's the core. Do I deserve my freedom? And you do. Whatever someone else may have said or done, you deserve your freedom. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Yes, we have time for one more question.
How to live in present instead of dwelling in past and future?
Great. How do we live in the present? First of all, you make a commitment to do so. That's the first piece. Second piece is you realize that your mind is under your control. But you have to realize that very deeply. And interestingly, most of us don't realize that. So here's my favorite way of thinking about this. If as I sat in front of you right here and I was talking and we're having satsang, if suddenly as I'm talking I started going like this, and I'm still giving satsang, but I'm doing like this with my arms, you'd think, what's going on? That's weird. Or if I started bouncing up and down on my legs, you'd think, that's weird. But then if I said, oh yeah, don't worry about them, those are just my silly arms and legs, you'd think, that's weirder. we understand very deeply and very intuitively that our arms and our legs should be in our control. When people have illnesses like Tourette's syndrome, for example, when suddenly they will twitch or they'll have a tic or they'll say something, it's an illness. Having words come out of your mouth that you don't have control over, having a tic in the body that you don't have control over, this is an illness. We know the body, the mouth, the tongue, it should be in my control. And if it's not, we understand there's a problem. But our minds, how many of us have said things like, oh yeah, my mind, I can't do anything about it. Just my silly mind, crazy mind, monkey mind, yeah. And we go on. It's the equivalent of having your arms do this and not realizing there's a problem. On what basis should our legs and our arms be under our control and our tongues should be under our control, but our mind shouldn't? Our mind actually plays a much larger role in our lives than our arms or our legs do, because our arms and our legs move according to what our mind says. And so in terms of that steering wheel of our lives, our mind is really key. And so we have to realize, on a very deep level, my mind must be in my control. The fact that it isn't is a failure on my part. Not that I should feel bad or guilty or ashamed, not that, but simply an awareness that there is an attention, an intention I have not given. There is a part of my existence that deserved my attention that I haven't given it. And that's okay. It's never too late. Pujya Swamiji always says, whenever you wake up, it's morning. So I'm going to start paying attention. And that's the first part. When the mind wanders, which it does inevitably, and it wanders to the past or the future, you just bring it back. In the beginning, you'll be an hour into a daydream before you even remember that you were supposed to be in the present. You'll be an hour into a panic attack about something in the future before you even remember. Or an hour into ruminating about something from the past before you even remember. But slowly, slowly as time goes, you'll only be 10 seconds into it before you remember. Because it becomes a habit, it's a sanskara. It's a neural network, a patterning in our brains. Any new habit you start, it takes time. Teach kids to brush their teeth. They always forget in the beginning. Parents always have to send their kids out of bed, back into the bathroom, brush your teeth, because they forget. But after a couple years, brushing our teeth becomes so second nature that nobody has to remind us to brush our teeth. If you're awake for more than a few minutes before brushing your teeth, something in the mind starts going, oh, I gotta brush my teeth. Oh, I gotta brush my teeth. In the same way, once you find yourself wandering into the future or the past, something in the mind knows, bring it back, bring it back. It's a practice. Stay aware of your breath. It's a wonderful way to stay anchored in the present. If you have a mantra that you can use, it's a wonderful way to stay anchored in the present. The minute the mind wanders, bring it back to the mantra. And if you can just keep the mantra going on in the mind the whole time, it's even better. Keeps the mind from wandering. But the minute it wanders, just bring it back. And there's all sorts of wonderful practices. Give yourself practices of being present. When you're eating, for example, instead of eating with your device, or eating while you're watching TV or chatting, eat silently. Be present, be aware. Even if you're sitting with people, just eat silently. Be aware, be present as you're eating. As you walk, can you really be present? Can you really feel the ground under your feet? Can you feel the shift in the weight from your back leg to your front leg as you walk? Everything you do, see how present you can be with it. When you have a shower, when you go to the bathroom. It's a little bit harder when you're working because your mind has to be focused on what you're doing. That takes a little bit longer to get down. So start with things that are easy. Start with things that don't necessarily require the mind so that your mind can just be present with it. You're moving, you're cooking, you're eating, you're bathing, you're walking, whatever it is. Brushing your teeth. Stay present. And the more you do that, the more you'll find as you move through your life, you're present. Another little trick from the gift boxes of behavioral therapy is take a rubber band, stick it on your wrist like this. It's very simple but very effective. Take a rubber band, stick it on your wrist. Every time your mind goes into the past or the future, just pull that rubber band and let it slap back on your wrist. It hurts. It hurts. It doesn't hurt enough that it counts as self-abuse, but it hurts enough that the mind learns, ooh, don't want to do that. And the minute that the mind starts to go, after you've done that to yourself a few dozen times, the minute the mind starts to wander, another part of the mind comes in to grab it before you realize it's wandered so that it doesn't have to feel the rubber band snap. So there are very simple ways of just retraining the brain, because that's all it is. It's just a habit of the brain. And slowly, 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 it'll happen. But it takes practice. You didn't learn to walk in a day. You didn't get that control over your legs or arms in a day. It took a few years, right? We go through crawling and then we're toddlers and we walk and we fall and we walk and we fall and we walk and we fall. That's why kids have cups that don't spill, because they drop them. They spill. It takes a few years to really get that kind of control of the hands and the legs down. You give a kid a spoon to feed themselves and it's all over their face. That simple act of where my mouth is in relation to where my hand is and how this thing works, it takes a little while, but eventually you get it. So in the same way, realize that just as you now have control over your arms and your legs, start working with it and you'll get that control over your mind. There's a beautiful story of a seeker in an ashram who says to the guru, you know, I've been meditating and I really want to experience God, but I'm not experiencing God, and I'm trying, but it's not happening. And I meditate, my mind wanders. So the guru takes him to a river and takes him by the head and pushes his head under the water. And he holds his head under the water. And first the guy thinks, all right, I'm just being blessed. And then he thinks, oh my God, I'm being drowned because the guru's not letting go. And now he's really struggling for breath and he's kicking and flailing. And at the very last minute, literally before he loses consciousness, the guru takes his hand up, pulls the guy up, and he, you know, as you could imagine someone would who'd been drowning. And the guru says to him, so what were you thinking about down there? And the guy says, thinking about? I was drowning. I was thinking about air. And the guru says, did your mind wander? I was like, of course my mind didn't wander. I was dying for air. And the Guru says, when you want God, like you wanted air, your mind will stop wandering. It's all about how much we want it. And so when you decide, I want to be present, I want to stop the mind from wandering, I want to experience God, I want to experience myself, you'll make it happen. But you have to want it more than you want the enjoyment of reliving the past, planning for the future, more than you enjoy the anxiety and the emotional drama and the ups and downs. And because see, the problem with that is we actually enjoy the drama. And so we want to be in the present, but wanting to want something is different than actually wanting it. So when you go from wanting to want it to actually wanting it, that's when it really starts. So realize this is the most important thing. This is what I'm here for. And when I want that more than I want the drama, then I'll have it. Wonderful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening.